Thomas, let me start with you. You are the Secretary General of the Dutch NVA, Dutch Journalist Syndicate. What can the NVA, the Dutch Journalist Syndicate, do for journalists in trouble? Dutch journalists in trouble abroad, and foreign journalists in trouble? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, in short, of course, as a Dutch Association of Journalists, we cannot do so much for journalists in problems all around the world, because we're too small to really, you know, put a light on all journalists in problem in the world, because there are a lot of problems. But what we can do, so we usually cooperate with some international organizations, such as the International Federation of Journalists, the European Federation of Journalists, and together with them, and together with the national unions in the countries itself, of course we can do something, and especially, and this sounds a bit like the easy method, but I think it's the only method we can make it work. If there's some sort of liaison between Holland and the journalist in the country at stake, and so of course the most known example, of course, this year was Frederik Geerdink, and also Mehmet Ulgur, who have Dutch origin and who were held by the police in Turkey, and of course then it's quite easy for us to alarm Dutch media if they don't do it themselves already, and you know, and put the light on this problem. But another example is of course the case of Füsun Erdogan, who was had a life sentence in Turkey and was released last year. We made a whole big campaign for her, making posters, 10,000 posters with our magazine, which we sent to all our journalists, and asked them to put it behind their windows and make photos of it. And of course we did it together with the European Federation of Journalists, we did it together with all international organizations, and in the end, and we did it together with her son, who lives in Holland, Aktas Erdogan, who also protested on the square in front of the Dutch parliament, for instance. So with all those things together, we think we have put some pressure on Turkish government, and we gave a face to somebody, to one of the journalists who are under pressure in Turkey. And finally, and that's the good end of that story, of course, she's now out of prison after 7 years. She's now free and living in Holland and can do her work again. So this makes us hopeful, but at the same time, of course, we are, if you look at the situation around the world, and I think the woman of Human Rights Watch said it correctly, that if you look at Egypt, or if you look at Russia, or you look at China, or you look at North Korea, Cuba, there's a lot of places, of course, where it's horrible to be a journalist. And I think, although I understand the question, you know, asked to my colleagues here in the session before, can you not be more are you critical enough? I think the people who were sitting here are heroes for me, because they, one of them is facing a jail time and is still coming here, and they don't know what's going to happen with the government. And I think we should admire them, and we should think that any sign of criticism in countries such as Turkey, but also in these other countries, should be embraced, and we should not ask questions, why don't they do more, but we should help them and provide them with the support we can.
And how could, for example, our audience or other people help NVA or help international organizations to help people out of prison? For example, I recall now Peter Greste, the Australian, who was 1 year in jail in Cairo. And when he came out, he said, I thank all diplomats for their efforts, but what I believe that really helped me is my colleagues everywhere in the media and everybody who made noise about our case, and that got him out of prison. There are still, I don't know, 50,000 in prison in Egypt, but he got out at least, so he agrees with what you are saying, that all this noise you're making helps government get annoyed of this negative media attention all the time. So maybe now I gave an answer to the question, but
yeah, we should give them a face. I mean, if I say, you know, that there around now there will be 22 journalists in prison in Turkey, you say, well, that's 22 too much. But if you look, for instance, for me that was very touching. You know, if you look at the son of Füsun Erdogan, Aktas Erdogan, who's really a nice young man. You know, he's 23 years old. And if you look at him, if you look at his mother, if you see their faces, if you see their photos, you will see these are no criminals, you know, these are people doing their work. So if you can make it feel, you know, that you can touch them, you know, and you can see, okay, these are not people with terrorist intentions or anything like that, but they're human beings like us, and just doing their work as a journalist. At least this helps. So we already concluded at the former session we had about Turkey on the 2nd of May on Press Freedom Day, that we should think again of new faces after Füsun Erdogan, also as an MVA and as an IFJ, you know, to make it touchable for the people here, also in Holland, that these are people behind bars and that they should not. And it's just like with press photos, it's the same, you know, one press photo can make a difference if it really shows the hostility of a war, if it really shows the brutality of leaders, of dictators and these kind of things. So this is at least one thing we should do. Give it a name, make it human, and make it nearby. But I would also ask the public perhaps later if they think that they can do something here, because I'm happy that they're here and that they are lasting so long, because it's a long session. But I think it's also an interesting question for the public.